Good day, everyone. I am Jester F. Jukino, the one who will discuss about the topic holistic rubric and its example. But before we proceed to our discussion for today, let us first read the learning objectives for this topic. At the end of the lesson, the students will be able to define holistic rubric, create a holistic rubric, and use holistic rubric effectively. And these are the learning objectives for this topic. And now that we already know about our learning objectives, before we proceed to our discussion about what is holistic rubric is, let us define first the meaning of rubrics. So, what is rubrics? Rubrics are multi-dimensional sets of scoring guidelines that can be used to provide consistency in evaluating student work. Actually, a rubrics is an explicit set of criteria used for assessing a particular type of work or performance and provides more details than a single grade or mark. Rubrics, therefore, will help you grade more objectively, and that's the meaning of rubrics. Now that we have an idea about the meaning of rubrics, let's jump now to the definition of holistic rubrics. Holistic rubrics are single criteria rubrics, a one-dimensional, which is used to assess participants' overall achievement on an activity or item based on predefined achievement levels. Performance descriptions are written in paragraphs and usually in full sentences. A holistic rubric consists of a single scale with all criteria to be included in the evaluation being considered together. Example: clarity, organization, and mechanics. With a holistic rubric, the rater assigns a single score, usually on a 1 to 4 or 1 to 6 point scale, based on an overall judgment of the student work. The rater matches an entire piece of student work to a single description on the scale. This kind of rubric allows you to assess students' overall performance on an activity or assessment based on a single scale using predefined achievement levels. Actually, there are two main components of a holistic rubric. The first one is a scale, usually 4 levels in a scale. And the second one is performance descriptions or criteria based on scale. Now, let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of using holistic rubrics. Let's talk about first the advantages. The first one is it emphasizes on what the learner can demonstrate. It provides emphasis on what the learner is able to demonstrate, either positive or rather than on deficits or negatives. The second advantage of holistic rubrics is it saves grading time. In what way? By minimizing the number of decisions an instructor needs to make while grading. The third one is the ability to be applied consistently by multiple instructors. Moreover, it takes less time to create than traditional analytic rubrics and less complex, which means it is easier for students to understand. And these are the advantages of using holistic rubrics. But how about the disadvantages? The disadvantages of using holistic rubrics are, it does not provide targeted feedback for improvement, and it can be difficult to identify a grade for student work when the work spans different levels within the rubric. Criteria cannot be weighted. And now, it is time to give an example for this kind of rubric. The best example for this kind of rubric, specifically holistic rubrics, is the checklists. Checklists are a distinct type of rubric where there are only two performance levels possible. Checklists tend to be longer than other types of rubrics, since each aspect of performance you are looking for in students' work or performances essentially becomes its own criterion. When you are using a checklist, every decision is binary. It's either yes or no, present or absent, pass or fail, and etc. Most rubrics can be converted rather directly into a checklist. For example, here is a rubric for grading journal entries. Holistic rubrics is very advantageous to all instructors because it can help them communicate their expectations to students and assess student work fairly and efficiently. Rubrics can also provide students with informative feedback on their strengths and weaknesses, and prompt students to reflect on their own work. Now, how to create a grading rubric. These are the steps in order to create an effective grading rubric. The first step is define the purpose of the assignment or assessment for which you are creating a rubric. In defining the purpose of the assignment or assessment, you need to consider what exactly is the assigned task. What might an exemplary student product or performance look like? And what kind of feedback do you want to give students on their work or performance? The second step is decide what kind of rubric you will use. Is that a holistic rubric or an analytic rubric? The third step is define the criteria. In this step, you will ask yourself, what knowledge and skills are required for the assignment or assessment? You'll make a list of this, group and label them, and eliminate any that are not critical. The list should contain no more than 6 to 7 criteria, but need not include that many. You can also revise the criteria as needed. Consider how you will weight them relative to each other. The fourth step is design the rating scale. Most rating scales include 3 to 5 levels. In designing the rating scale, you need to consider what students are able to demonstrate in this assignment or assessment, like what are the possible levels of achievement. Will you use numbers or descriptive labels for these levels? If you choose descriptive labels, what labels are most appropriate? Will you assign a number to those labels? And in what order will you list these levels from lowest to highest or vice versa? The fifth step in creating an effective grading rubric is write descriptions for each level of the rating scale. In this step, you will create statements of expected performance at each level of the rubric. For an analytic rubric, do this for each particular criterion of the rubric. These descriptions help students understand your expectations and their performance in regard to those expectations. For well-written descriptions, you can describe observable and measurable behavior, use parallel language across the scale, indicate the degree to which the standards are met. The last but not the least step is create your rubric. Develop the criteria, rating scale, and descriptions for each level of the rating scale into a rubric. Space permitting, include the assignment at the top of the rubric. For reading and grading is, limit the rubric to a single page if possible. Consider the effectiveness of your rubric and revise accordingly. After you use the rubric, analyze the results and consider its effectiveness, then revise accordingly. And these are the steps that you need to follow in order to create an effective grading rubric. And that's all about holistic rubrics. I hope you learned something about my discussion. And thank you so much for listening to this video. God bless everyone and goodbye.